I'm glad that we're not dealing with a rate my Skype room scenario here, but let me introduce myself. My name is Don Jacobson. I am an author. I've been working on in the Jane Austen fan fiction, Austenesque fiction arena now for about 5 years. Uh, my most recent work is entitled In Plain Sight. It was published by Meryton Press in June of 2020. And this little video is by way of introduction to explain just a bit about my idea of how the book itself was meant to reach out to you, the reader. About myself, a little background. I have been in a variety of careers. I finally got an honest job. I went to work in advertising for about 25 years. But after that, I moved on to teaching, and now I also write. I'm a historian, predominantly American history, but also European history. So much of my writing is colored by the way that I have approached my academic writing as well as my fiction writing. It's just my proclivities that kind of pop through. I've always found that it bothers me when I feel like people are making stuff up without any particular real explanation. So if, as you move through my work, you'll see a note on the corner of something, you don't have to read it. But I do offer you the explanation as to why I put something into the book, where it came from, or even who was the person that actually exists. Those all are just intended to be enhancements. That's not meant to say anything beyond that. Let's turn for a moment to In Plain Sight, because that is the book over the next series of videos that you see. I will be reading some excerpts from. You can also, of course, find excerpts from In Plain Sight at a variety of locations on my blog tour, which is underway in June of 2020. In Plain Sight is my own particular take about the Elizabeth and Darcy story. I had been afraid to kind of approach these two seminal characters in literature, if only because thousands of books in the Austenesque and Jane Austen fan fiction realms had been written centering on Fitzwilliam Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet, their fraught relationship. If at any time it was, boy meets girl, girl hates boy, boy disses girl, boy finds girl attractive, girl still hates boy, boy professes his love, well, you know what it means. It's Elizabeth and Darcy circling around one another for about 1 year. I was uncomfortable in approaching that because I feared that I wouldn't be able to find an original approach that would create the type of book that I would want to read. And I think that's key for everything that I do, is that, yes, I'm certainly writing for you, the readers, but I also use as the marker, is this a book that I would find on my own bookshelf? That said, obviously, in some cases, people will say, hey, it's great on your bookshelf, Don. Never on mine. And I accept that because, of course, everybody has a different reading experience that they look for. In Plain Sight might violate some people's ideas of how the eternal love binary between Elizabeth and Fitzwilliam is handled. For me, I had to look at kind of what was to the essential nut that was hidden, the kernel that was deep inside of this relationship. And it really comes down to a question of social position, at least that's what appeared to me. The mobilizer in Pride and Prejudice is Fitzwilliam Darcy's incredible pride over the fact that he is a Darcy, that he is one of the largest landholders in all of Great Britain, that he's one of the wealthiest men in all of Great Britain, and he's proud of that fact. Unfortunately, that also makes him arrogant, and as we well know, when combined with his innate shyness, not good things happen. But Elizabeth Bennet, while she is portrayed as being beneath him, is not the daughter of a man who owns a grist mill. She's not a servant. She is a gentlewoman. Hence, we get that fabulous, famous line, I am a gentleman, she is a gentleman's daughter. Insofar as that, we are equals. Okay, so there is that essential baseline, which means that, as I thought, somewhere inside of both of them is this pride of class that they had. So I wanted to look backwards and say, well, okay, what is the device that I need to really use to peel back the layers of Fitzwilliam Darcy, but also in the same process, peel back something about Elizabeth Bennet. And so I finally hit on this idea of inversion. What will make Fitzwilliam Darcy open to the type of change that he needs to make in order to become worthy of Elizabeth Bennet? In Pride and Prejudice, it is the Hunsford proposal and refusal. It is the loss of the love that he believes he cannot live without. I did not need to use the Hunsford proposal in my own mind as a way to break Fitzwilliam Darcy's character down. I needed to find something else, and what I found was the loss of position. In other words, he was no longer Fitzwilliam Darcy, Master of Pemberley, largest landholder in Derbyshire, the great Darcy, the wealthy, the man with £10,000 a year. How to do that? Well, that's, of course, part and parcel of the story. Suffice it to say that tragic things happen. Darcy is sentenced to a term of 7 years of internal exile of hard labor. He now becomes a convict. And that, not a spoiler, that is what allows us now to turn to the Elizabeth story. Because now Elizabeth Bennet, the gentleman's daughter, the daughter of a modest gentleman in Hertfordshire, is now so far above the convict as to have him be invisible to her, much as Elizabeth Bennet technically was socially invisible to Fitzwilliam Darcy. So that's kind of the rolling idea behind how the book will develop. I would like to just read a little bit of the premise on the back cover of the book. I assure you that it's not that I am not attentive to you, but I actually have to read this off of a piece of paper, which is located just on the other side of this camera. One of my favorite quotes is actually not delivered by either Fitzwilliam or by Elizabeth. It is delivered by an old sailor by the name of Charlie Tompkins, who has a very important role in this book. Charlie says, at the end of the day, when each of us is lying flat on our backs, looking at the ceiling, and the vicar is whispering in our ear, the greatest comfort we shall have is to know that we loved well and were well loved in return. Now, Fitzwilliam Darcy is faced with a crisis in about his 22nd year. His father slides into an early grave, as we all know, and Fitzwilliam is forced to take on Pemberley's mantle. Now, brandy numbs his pain, but Darcy's worst inclinations run wild. After tragedy rips everything away, he spends years finding his way back to a new life as a man redeemed by a woman's loving understanding. Elizabeth Bennet is afflicted with a common Regency ailment, observing the world about her but not seeing those beneath her notice. Then a clarifying act shatters the propriety that has denied her heart the transcendent love she craves. Now, In Plain Sight explores Jane Austen's eternal love story by flipping social roles on their heads. From their first encounter, Elizabeth Bennet and the convict known as Smith must overcome their prejudices and break through their pride. Only then can they share the treasure that is hidden in plain sight. My friends, what I'm going to be doing is I am going to offer you a series of scenes from the book, scenes that I particularly enjoy, but not necessarily pieces which you have seen. Ideally, they will not be spoilers, and I hope they won't be. So please take a look at the other videos that you will see on this site. Feel free to comment, feel free to share, and I look forward to hearing from you about them. Thanks.